Hello everyone, welcome to our group article presentation. Our members are Li Mengnan, Du Chun, Xu Shulin, and Su Dana. In this presentation, we will bring the article a comparison of multiple choice and open-ended response formats for the assessment of listening proficiency in English to you. Hopefully, after our introduction, you can have a better understanding of the article and some teaching and testing implications. Our presentation will be composed by 5 components, including introduction, which I, Li Mengnan, will deliver soon, and methodology will be introduced by Du Chun. Data analysis and interpretation will be explained by Xu Shulin. Conclusion and implications will be conducted by Diana. Let's start from introduction. In this component, I would introduce the background and some concepts and theories behind the article and its research questions. First, let's see what is listening comprehension. According to Bernard, listening comprehension is a dynamic cognitive mental process, and the most important it is invisible, or you can understand it as an interaction between task-based and listener-based component. It will be influenced by some factors, like numerous task and listener variables, including task topic, theoretical organizations, how they familiar with the background knowledge, the listening material, and their linguistic proficiency. Since we've mentioned that the listening comprehension is invisible, and it could be only felt by the listener themselves, so how to observe or measure it? Let's see what the researchers do. First, the new auditory information will come to the listener, and they will link it to their existing knowledge. After that, they need to finish some tasks, and their performance could reflect whether they understand what they've heard or not. So, different assessment tasks could measure or reflect different levels and types of cognitive activity, like acquisition, comprehension, applications, and so on. For our daily teaching and testing, if you want to determine whether students have sufficient language skill to handle everyday contact, when you design the items, you need to relate them to their daily basis. There are 2 basic types of response. One is selected response, including multiple choice match activities, true or false questions, which require listeners choose the answer from the given options. The other one is constructed response, including open-ended questions, closed tasks, and summarize, which require listeners create answers based on what they've heard and their understanding. Implying the response format to assess comprehension may influence how task takers interact with the auditory stimuli, how well they convey their understanding, and further, like I just said, to predict how well they will perform in real-life situations. Researchers of this article chose 3 types of response, including traditional multiple choice. It is objective, reliable, rapid, and effective in grading. Multiple choice close. It is the combination of the traditional close and the traditional multiple choice, so it has the advantage of both. Moreover, it can assess listeners' semantic and syntactic knowledge. Last response is open-ended questions. It can minimize the rote learning, and it can test the students' listening, writing, and reconstructing together. Based on the chosen responses, researchers wrote 4 questions. The first one, whether different types of responses will influence the listener's performance. And second and third one, which type of responses do the listener perform the best and the worst. The last one, their perceptions and attitudes toward 3 different types of responses. Next, my peer Du Chun will introduce the methodology for you.
Thank you, Mengnan, for the introduction part. I'm Chun Du, and I will explain the methodology of the research. In this part, it will conclude participants and instruments of the research, pilot study, and procedure. The participants of the study were 159 technical college students who speak Chinese as their first language and average age of 18.5 years old. They have 7 to 8 years of English learning experience. They had taken 2 semesters of English listening classes before the research. None of them passed the intermediate level of the General English Proficiency Test. There were 2 data collection instruments. The first one is listening tests. In test item selection, a total of 30 contextual dialogues, which contains the shortest verbal prompts, usually between men and women whose native language is English speaking, 2 to 4 times in turn were used to test students' listening comprehension. There were 30 test questions in total. Each conversation is followed by a test question. In regard to the question criterion, the items must be content related. The problem cannot use common sense or prior knowledge without first understanding or listening to the dialogue. And these items are for understanding the information is a different thinking process, so the main theme, details, and reasoning evidence need to be explicit. The subject of each dialogue must consider the interest of the candidates as much as possible. The 30 questions are divided into 3 tests, test 1, 2, and 3. Each test consists of 10 dialogues and 10 questions in different question formats. As regard to the formats, we can see in table 1. Treatment 1 is multiple choice, and items only played once with 4 alternative answers, as well as treatment 2. Treatment 3 is open-ended questions, and the conversation will be played twice. In order to minimize the ranking effect, the order of treatment in each test is shown in table 2. In the table, we can see test 1, 2, and 3 follows the different sequence of each treatment. The second research instrument is post-test survey. The post-test questionnaire uses 9 open-ended attitude questions to investigate participants' beliefs and attitudes towards different response formats. In order to obtain a more accurate explanation, the survey conducted questions and answers in the subject's native language, in this case is Chinese. In order to study whether the 3 test items are suitable for the test taker's listening comprehension ability, the researchers conducted a pilot study. There are a few considerations and adjustments to the final tests. Let's look at the considerations first. Construction of the questions, which means when the test questions are not well written, the candidates can answer correctly by matching the words used in the questions with the words in the article. It will affect the validity and the reliability of the tests. A large number of studies have shown that when the target language is used for assessment, the comprehension ability of candidates will be affected. If the learners can use their native language to analyze and memorize, they will be able to give full play to their comprehension abilities. All materials used to assess listening comprehension must be new to each subject to ensure the effectiveness of each treatment. There are 3 solutions related to the considerations, respectively. This study conducted a pilot listening test with 115 subjects whose English ability was similar to that of the target test takers. And the pilot testing results of 150 subjects showed that all test items have the ideal difficulty level, and they are the same, and within the ideal recognition range. The researchers decided to use the target language to give open-ended questions, and their mother tongue can be used in the answer. In the first question of the post-test survey, the subjects will be asked to confirm that they have not been exposed to the hearing materials involved in the test before, and the survey revealed that all the participants had not heard these conversations or performed similar tests in advance. There are 3 stages in procedure of the listening test and scoring. Before the test, participants were divided into 3 groups according to their academic majors. Using the hypothesis of homogeneity of variance, a preliminary listening test was conducted. The results of the pre-listening test shows that the 3 groups are homogeneous. In order to reduce the impact of exercises and possible difficulty differences between tests, each subject has undergone 3 tests. The interval between each test is 4 weeks. During the test, treatment 1 and 2 will be given 10 seconds for the response time, and treatment 3 will have 30 seconds. The average time for each test is 30 minutes. Until the experiment is completed, the correct answer is given and the content is explained. Each correct answer of multiple choice and multiple choice clause gets 2 points. So the possible total score here is 60, as well as the open-ended questions. The researcher and another English teacher scored the questions separately. The 2 sets of scores were submitted for correlation analysis to determine the reliability of the scores. The items that the 2 raters disagree with were shown to the 3rd rater. This is the part of methodology. Next, my partner Shulin will explain the research results.
Here is the data analysis and interpretation part. The research analyzed its data through 3 stages. At first, they analyzed its data through SPSS statistics software package, and then a one-way analysis of variance with repeated measures was done to see whether there was any statistically significant mean difference between the 3 treatments. And when a significant difference among the means was found, the Shapley test for comparison of means was used to pinpoint where the differences lay. Here is the results of the Shapley test. We can see from the table that the mean score of the traditional multiple choice was 33.84, whereas the mean score of open-ended was 25.23, denoting that the students performed better on the traditional multiple choice test, and the mean score of the multiple choice closed test, which is 35.43, was higher than that of the open-ended test, which is 25.23, indicating that the subject performed significantly better on the multiple choice closed test. So now we can answer research question number 1, 2, and 3. In both traditional multiple choice and multiple choice closed test, the student scores higher than on the open-ended test, showing clearly that the listening scores increased in the selected response category. And students performed best on multiple choice closed test, followed by the traditional multiple choice test, then they scored the lowest on the open-ended test. After the test, a post-test survey was conducted. It consists of 9 questions concerning students' perceptions or attitude towards the different test formats and the method or strategies applied to the different tests. The first 5 questions is about students' perceptions or attitude towards different test formats. In response to the survey question number 2 and 3, 97% of students indicate their preference for the selected response type over the reconstruction type, because they could use test-taking strategies to increase understanding and get better grades. They felt less nervous and pressured while providing the selected response. However, 89% of the subjects stated that they disliked open-ended formats because the answer to each question was not definite, and they felt that their listening scores were in this way negatively influenced. 96% of the subjects claimed that they performed equally well in the traditional multiple choice and the multiple choice closed test. 97% of the students thought that the open-ended questions were the most difficult type of response because they perceived themselves to be relatively poor at reconstructing or paraphrasing the absorbed auditory message clearly in a limited period of time, even if it is in their native language. And this is based on the response of survey question number 4 and 5. The next 4 questions is about the method or strategy students applied to different tests. 97% of students indicate that guessing played a fairly important part in the selected response category. They said that the correct answer they choose did not necessarily mean full comprehension of the spoken stimuli. While taking the multiple choice and multiple choice closed test, they claimed that if time permitted, they quickly read through the choices and predict what they would hear next before listening to the dialogue. After listening, they analyzed the choices given, eliminate the incorrect ones, and then choose the one left. Most of the subjects mentioned that this prediction of what was forthcoming before listening lowered their anxiety and increased the rate of accuracy. And that's the response of survey question number 6. As for the question number 7, students mentioned that open-ended questions provided fewer clues that would facilitate recall than the multiple choice items did before listening. Under such circumstances, they could not predict the forthcoming topic and set up expectations before listening, so they felt much more pressured and nervous. Most students claim that while listening, they try to grasp 1 or 2 expressions and then set up expectations in the form of a script about that normally would happen in that context. They stated further that their comprehension was more dependent on the combination of making inferences and interpreting the linguistic information. And as for the question number 8 and 9, all the subjects claimed that they used the same method to answer traditional multiple choice and multiple choice closed response formats. 63% of the subjects claimed that they would express what they had heard more fully in open-ended formats, because they could express their understanding in their own words, especially when they were allowed to answer in their native language. And that's the end of the data analysis and interpretation.
Here's Dana, and in part 4, there are some conclusions of the study and implications for English teaching. Firstly, this study shows that the listening scores would be affected by the different types of response formats. And from the data, it indicates that learners would perform better in selective questions than in open-ended questions. There are some feasible reasons. The first one is, according to the keywords in MC and MCC, selections would help learners to guess the meaning of the answers. The second one is that the keywords would help learners to search their memory of the listening materials. Without the keywords, it would be harder to find out the specific information from the whole text. The third one is that the keywords would help learners to predict the topic before the conversation. As we all know, prediction could be an efficient way for learners to control the aim and the direction of the contents. This all could not be worked in the open-ended response format because it does not provide extra information. Actually, in real life, there is no any transcript between people's communication, so the worst performance in OE indicates that learners do not have enough ability to deal with the common communication in daily life. However, better scores of MC and MCC show that these two formats are used for compensatory communication strategies in listening test. In addition, although learners did not perform well in OE, it also plays an important role in schematizing the new knowledge, so researchers suggested that it should be reinforced in the later language teaching and learning processes. According to the data, the higher scores in MCC show that it is more easier than MC. It is because the interference of their first language, Chinese. The main differences between these two formats is that MC used interrogative questions and MCC used statement construction. There are two kinds of interrogative questions to reflect. The first one is yes-no interrogative question, which would like to add a question word ma at the end of the sentence. Here is an example of it. And another one is WH interrogative question, which has the same statement sequence of sentence with English. So, in such cases, Chinese native speakers will react faster on statement structures. This study shows some limitations on details. On the one hand, this test was conducted through the written model, so all of the listening items would be printed on the paper. Participants would be tested their listening skills through listening the questions, but their reading ability also be contained in the answering process, so their results would be affected by the given information. On the other hand, participants should be covered diverse with different backgrounds, such as the different age scales, different English proficiency, and different first language backgrounds. Some implications the researchers indicate for language education contain different perspectives. They pointed out that teachers should change their attitudes on the scores. In the past, the scores would be connected with the teacher's instruction and learner's competence. Higher scores are from excellent instruction of teachers and great success of learners, but lower scores show the failure of teaching and incompetence of learners. However, it should be modified. The scores could only reflect if the teaching approaches are appropriate and the contents are not difficult for learners. Meanwhile, in the listening test, both selected and constructed response formats should be involved. Multiple choice questions would help lower proficient students to build their confidence and interest on learning English. As for higher proficient learners, these two parts would both lead them experience success and encourage them to try to solve more challenges. During the designing process, the difficult sequence of the items should be noticed. It should be incremental. That is, the initial items should be the fundamental level with enough printed information to help learners ensure their basic scores. Then it needs some difficulties such as constructing appropriate answers by themselves without any extra information. The confidence of students could be one of important factors for success, so learners would give up if they could not experience success all the time. That's all of our presentation. Thanks for watching. And next, we're gonna talk about a relevant question in discussion part.